I'd like to take a vote. Which is better, understanding a parody right away because you've already seen what it's spoofing, or seeing the parody first and then later getting it? The latter was the case for me when I first saw The Shining. It gets to the most famous part and I'm like, oh, now I get that joke in Finding Nemo.
Here's Brucey!
Dr. Sleep is based on the novel by Stephen King and is the sequel to the 1980 horror classic The Shining. Ewan McGregor stars as an adult Danny Torrance, who is living a hard life as an alcoholic like his father did before he died at the Overlook Hotel. When he meets a young girl named Abra, who shares his abilities produced by The Shining, they form an alliance to face off against a cult that kidnaps people who have The Shining and feeds off of their powers so that they can live forever. 39 years after its release, The Shining still stands as one of the most terrifying horror movies ever made, and it is my second favorite Stanley Kubrick film, only after Eyes Wide Shut. Don't judge me. So I was intrigued to see what could be done with a sequel about Danny as an adult and what has happened to him since the events of the first movie. And while Dr. Sleep isn't the horror masterpiece that The Shining is, it's a compelling sequel. I had relative confidence in Mike Flanagan as director and editor. I enjoyed Hush, the Netflix movie he helmed. Ouija Origin of Evil sucked, but to be fair, I don't think even Stanley Kubrick could have made a prequel to an already horrible movie work. And I have to give Flanagan credit, he really works hard to recreate the surreal atmosphere that Kubrick constructed. He fills the scenery with hazy and/or symmetrical shots, and sometimes during certain scenes, he'll add to the surrealness factor by cutting to something else for less than a second. It's very Kubrickian, and it does pull you back into the environment of the first movie. Which is why it's unfortunate that the biggest weakness of the movie is that it's not all that scary. The first movie had a constant sense of dread from beginning to end, and only very occasionally did I get that same feel here. Now part of this is due to the fact that this movie is more character-driven than the first. It zeroes in on Danny's life after he and his mother escape from the Overlook Hotel, and how he has turned to alcoholism as the one way to get a little bit of his father back. It tugged at the heartstrings at times, and in turn it's uplifting when he eventually builds this friendship with Abra when they find that they have the same abilities. The story also really delves into The Shining itself, surprisingly more so than the movie that's called The Shining. There are also some story elements from the first book, The Shining, that the movie left out, which are woven into this one, which I thought was neat. There are a number of visual and verbal callbacks to the first movie, most of which are when the story is taken back to the Overlook, and a few of those callbacks are a little too eager. In a scene where Danny looks through that hotel room door that has the huge hole left in it from all those years ago, it cuts to that scene from the first movie, when his mother is screaming in horror as Jack slices through the door with the axe. Just in case you didn't recognize that as the location of the most famous scene in the movie. I have to give big props to the young actress Kylie Curran. She has only had one other role before this, and she does an excellent job as Abra. She's particularly awesome in a scene where she's in the back seat of a car and she and Danny combine their powers, and I won't say what happens because it's very funny. And as for the more accomplished actors, Ewan McGregor is great as Danny, and Rebecca Ferguson is strangely charming and also intimidating as the leader of the cult. Now, one small error I'd like to point out is during a scene that takes place at a movie theater in the year 2011, we see a poster out front for The Lucky One, a movie that was released in 2012. I know that's not the kind of anachronism that takes you out of the movie, like a car driving by in The Adventures of Robin Hood, but when you're a film buff such as me, that kind of thing stands out. So while it can't top The Shining, Dr. Sleep is a worthy successor. It didn't scare me that much, but I was invested in the characters, I did feel like I was taken back into the world of The Shining, and I really liked what it all amounted to in the end. Given the reasons that Stephen King was unhappy with the film adaptation of The Shining, I think that he at least is going to like this one more. And if you're a fan of the book who had similar sentiments toward the movie, I think you probably will too. I'm going to give Dr. Sleep a 75%. That's a wrap. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this review helpful. Like and share, subscribe for more. This is Pop Culture. I'm Alex Pop.